Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. Today I will show you how to make 3 different clay ideas. So let's get going. Hey, welcome to my channel. So for the first project, I'm going to start out with some translucent clay. And this is the brand. You can use whatever brand you want. If you like Primo, then use Primo. While I'm kind of cutting off a piece and working it out, I just wanted to welcome everybody to my channel. And if you'd be so kind as to hit that subscribe button, I do have over 200 videos for your viewing pleasure, and I hope that you binge watch all of them. I also have some playlists, and I hope you like some of the ideas, and hopefully they help you generate some of your own and kind of get those creative juices there flowing. Basically, you just want to work your piece and get it all nice and ready to go. Roll it out into a fairly thicker piece. And you can use chalk pastels. These are just some very old chalk pastels. You could also use makeup powders, mica powders, glitters, whatever you have. Don't go out and buy anything. Just be creative with the stuff you have at home. Also, I will be using some alcohol inks. Totally optional. You can just use the powders if you want. But I do want to use these in more projects, so I'm trying to incorporate those. Lots of colors, so I want to kind of use them. You'll need some Q-tips or something for wiping on your clay. And then a cutter. You want something that's kind of similar to the size that you're going to be using on the clay, as in the Q-tips. I will have to kind of spread out my colors a little bit to make them as big as that cutter. Pick out the colors you want to use. I am going to be doing all of mine in various shades of green. Very pretty, light, dark, kind of fluorescent color greens. And then also I picked out some alcohol inks that had green in them. And these are the colors that I chose. Kiwi. It always makes me want to eat fruit. I haven't had a kiwi in years though. They are delicious though. Alright, and you won't need a big piece of clay. You'll just need something small unless you are making something rather large. Just take your Q-tip and put a little bit of your powders on there or alcohol inks. And just start in the middle or the side. I'm just going to kind of start here at the top and just sort of work it out into a little circle. Just trying to make it as big as my cutter. So just going from color to color. And you'll see there, you want to make sure it's kind of as big as your cutter, or roughly about that size. And then I am going to kind of intermingle some of the alcohol inks, and I will be using the Q-tips. Just trying to put a little bit on the end there. You don't want a whole lot because you don't want your ink to kind of bleed all over your clay. So just start off with a very little amount at first. You can always put a little bit more if you feel like it's not smearing on there well enough or saturating the color very much. I've gone through and put all of my little green splotches on there. Kind of looks very pretty, like a leap pad, like for a frog. Oh, my hands are really dirty, so I should have put gloves on. Yikes! Just time to clean up and get my hands all clean. And it's stained. Oh well. You'll want to take your cutter and kind of push it into the clay. You don't want to go all the way to the back and cut all the way through. you want to make an indentation deep enough so that when we put paint in this in a later step, that it actually sinks down in there. So make your clay as thick as you need to make it so that you don't completely cut all the way through. And I'll just go around with my circle cutter and kind of cut, quote unquote, all the way around all my little colors. You can use a cutter if you have a cutter. I just love being imaginative and making my own shapes, so I'm just using a piece of paper, randomly making a shape, and then I'm going to cut that out. But again, feel free to use cutters. It would look very pretty with cutters. And I do love my X-Acto knife. It's quite precise. And then I also made another cutout. And this would be for my necklace. The other ones will be for my earrings. And just cut that out. And guys, save these. Oh my gosh. Such beautiful scrap pieces. Beautiful, beautiful. And you know I like scrap clay projects. Or maybe you don't. I do have a playlist for that if you want to explore. I'm just going to go around, use my fingers since I did cut it out, and just kind of pat it a little bit to make the rim all the way around the outside nice and smooth so it's not all jagged. Totally optional. And I do want mine to be kind of domed, so I'm going to use the back of a spoon to put my earrings on there. So they're not just flat. It'll give it a little nice pop to it. I did that with my necklace too, all on the back of spoons. Put those in the oven to bake. Once it's baked, you'll see here, looks pretty good. You'll need some black paint or whatever color complements the colors that you chose for your clay. And just kind of take your small paintbrush and dab it into those lines that you cut into the clay with your cutter. Being sure to get all the way down into the cracks. Take a soapy cloth and just kind of wipe away any of the excess that might be on the top part of the clay. Like so. And I am going to put some resin in all of these little bubbles. It is a little bit tedious, but my piece is small, so it didn't take me very long. Like I always say, I just love podcasts, so I just put one of those on, or music sometimes, and listen to that while I do that. Any tedious projects go by faster that way. You can make your bubbled look as big as you want. You'll see there in the middle. It's a little bit bigger than the sides, so I had to put a little bit more on the sides to make them a little bit more bubbly. And I finished out with the rest of mine. And then in all of that negative space that's not bubbles, I'm just going to take a little bit of resin and fill in those areas so that it is shiny also. I did the same with my necklace. There you go from the side. It kind of looks like frog skin to me. I don't know what you think, let me know. But it came out really, really cute. I like it. And these are my earrings. I love the texture of the little bubbles. Idea number 2, guys. Here we go. And I'm using some beige. You can use any lighter clay that you want. You could probably also use translucent if you wanted to. But I really like this color. I've rolled it out into a tube, and then I'm going to take my roller and flatten it. I just feel that this works best instead of just flattening it all together. I feel like I can control it a little bit more, and it comes out a little bit more even. You'll need a wooden dowel stick. These were like candy apple sticks, so I have plenty of those. I'm just going to use that for this project. You'll need something a little bit long and kind of thin, unless you want your little bubble holes, as you'll see later on, to be a bit wider or thicker in the middle. Cutting off one side so that it is nice and even and flat. And I'll just need to work this clay up and around, folding it over my wooden dowel. You could also use like a wooden handle of a tool. When you roll it up, you'll probably have quite a bit of excess. You can do one of two things. You could roll it out until everything's nice and smooth, but I don't want all that excess clay, so I'm just going to use the edge of my tissue blade and slice it off. And then just give it a nice gentle roll. You don't want to press too hard, but you do want to make sure everything is even. You don't want to make anything longer, just kind of combine and join everything together. Just see there, mine needs to be worked just a little bit because it was getting a little stuck. You can cut off the ends just so they're nice and even. And then if it's a little bit too loose, you can just use your hand to kind of firm it up. Very gently putting in the palm of your hand and lightly pressing it all together, and it will make the clay a little bit more firm and stick to your wooden dowel. You don't want it to stick, but you want it to be kind of close to it, roughly the same size. And then, of course, my alcohol inks, as in the first project. 25 wonderful colors. I just love these things. Anyway, so you can pick out whatever colors just tickle your boat. And whatever colors make you happy. So I'm just going to look through here and find some colors that I like. And lesson learned from the first project, time to wear some gloves. Be sure to shake your inks if you're using inks. You could also, in this project, use some form of powder, mica powder, makeup powder, glittery, sparkly, pixie dust powder, whatever you have on hand. Hey, you could probably actually use some herbs too, maybe, or like spices. I don't know, just an idea. But these are all the colors that I have chosen. And I'm going to use a paintbrush, a very tiny paintbrush. I would recommend putting this on a piece of paper because it's going to get a little bit messy. You can do this one of two ways. You can either take your inks and just dot it on your clay, but that would be very messy. So to control it a little bit better, I'm going to use a paintbrush. But if you kind of want to go for more of a messy look, just blotch it on there, just squirt a little bit on there. But I just want a little bit because I want to add quite a few colors on here, and I don't want them to all bleed together. And you can always go back and put a second coat of the color once it's dry, just to give it a little bit more of a richer color. And be sure when you're rolling it around not to roll it around on the paper because it might make your colors kind of bleed if it's not completely dry. So I'm just kind of lifting it up from my paper as I'm turning it so that it doesn't kind of all mush together. Be sure to clean your paintbrush in between each color. I just took a little bit of rubbing alcohol and cleaned it, and it comes out pretty good and pretty clean. It's better than soap and water in my opinion. And then just start taking some of your other colors and dabbing it on there. If you have a particular color that you like the best and you kind of want it to dominate your clay, then just use that quite a bit. I really like this pink, but I am trying to just have a variety of colors, and I love the way it looks. So this is mine, and once it's pretty dry, you can just take and roll it out on a scratch piece of paper. Even though it's dry to the touch, it actually still rubs off some of that ink. So it'll do that until you bake it pretty much. So just kind of roll it a little bit just to get any of the excess that might be on there off so that your colors are nice and crisp. And then you'll just make sure that your wooden stick is kind of moving around freely in the center. And you'll need a tissue blade for this next step. You can make your cuts as large as you want, make them different sizes. It's totally up to you. I'm going to make mine as evenly as possible the same size. So just taking my tissue blade and rolling it across as I am turning my wooden stick, and it makes a nice pretty cut, just even and slow as you cut, as you'll see there. And of course, the side that we cut is not going to have any ink on it. You can leave it that way if you want. But I'm going to take a little bit of ink and fill in all of the space on the top. You could do this with one color, or you could do like you did with the side and just sort of mix and match your color on there. And so that it bakes nice and flat, I'm going to just place that on a separate baking stone here. And it is all nice and ready to be baked. While that's baking, I'm going to take some of this very, very, very beautiful clay, and I'm going to condition it and roll it out. This will be the backing for our piece. So you do want it to be fairly thick. And I do recommend like a sparkly, something with like kind of glitter particles in it, or that mica kind of powders in it. It just makes it very sparkly. And I wanted to use this circle cutter, but it just didn't work out because my circles were too big to fit inside of there. So I'm going to totally freehand this, and I'm actually going to come out with a really interesting looking shape in the end. So I'm actually more happy that my circle cutter didn't work out. I did place a smaller circle in the middle, and I'm going to place all of my circles around that because I do want the centerpiece to be cut out. I think this will give a lot to the piece. Before cutting out the center, I am going to go around and just use my finger and kind of press the clay circles down into my pretty pink clay. You can also use a tool end, and it just fits on there very nicely, just pressing. Don't go all the way through to the back, but you do want to press pretty firmly so it sticks into the clay. Just give it a nice gentle roll so everything's nice and smooth and even. I'm going to place the circle cutter back in the middle and then cut out my circle shape. And then using my X-Acto knife, I'm going to go around the outer rim and cut out my shape. And I want it to be kind of domed upwards instead of backwards. So I'm going to put it on the inside of a bowl, just making sure it's nice and flat in there and that the clay is sticking to the bowl nicely. And go ahead and bake that. And I baked it. And in each one of those precious little circles, I put a dollop of resin and then cured it. And it is quite shiny and sparkly, and I love it. And I don't really know if the camera picked it up well enough, but... And on the back, it is kind of dimply, and that's because I was pressing the circles down into the clay. So it did kind of give it some texture on the back, but I really like the way it looks back there. That might bother some people, but it doesn't me. And these are my little funky earrings I made to go with it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I do have one more tutorial for ya. I'm going to use some of this clay. It's like a minty kind of color. This is the brand, and I don't know exactly what color it is because it kind of wiped off. But you can use any color that you like. Pinks, greens, blues, purples, yellows. Whatever color is your favorite. You want to take your clay, roll it out, and you'll make it pretty thin. This is going to be the center part of our piece, so it's going to be wrapped in clay, so it doesn't have to be super thick. And I'm going to use my circle cutter for this project. You can use any shape that you want. I'm going to cut out my circle, and then I'm going to cut out a circle. You can either do it directly in the middle of your piece or up towards the top. I've decided to do mine up towards the top. I just thought that looked the best. You'll want to put that on a flat surface and bake it in the oven. And you can bake directly on the tile, because one side will be the back and one side will be the front. Now, your center circle, be wary that when we add clay onto it, it will make your center piece smaller. So if you want your circle that's cut out to be larger, you're going to have to make it larger in the beginning before baking, so that when we put clay on it later, it's still the same size that you want it to be. And I have this stone faux clay. And this is the brand. And that is the name of it. It's a granite. You want to take a small piece. You don't need a lot. You're going to work it out and roll it out until it's very, very thin. So basically, I'm going to take the rolled out clay and make shapes on my baked clay. You can make different sized shapes. It's supposed to kind of be like a rock that's got maybe a gem inside. If your clay is not sticking to your dry clay, you can use some Bake Bond, but I didn't really have a problem with it. It didn't stick all the way in the beginning, but the more I worked with it, and we're going to bake it again, so it will kind of bond together, but you can always use Bake Bond if you're more comfortable with that. Just go around your piece and just start making shapes. We can adjust and cut out if we don't like the way our shape looks, so don't feel like it's ugly and it's not looking how I want it to. Just make kind of holes where you want your color to show through. And you can kind of fix it and perfect it in a little while. We're just going to focus on the top part. The sides and the back will come in a minute. So this is my piece, and I'm going to roll it out, and my holes did get smaller. So I'm going to have to go back with tools. Use any tool that you have. You could even use toothpicks. But basically, you'll want to go ahead and cut back out your shape. Just kind of working it a little bit. It does take a little bit of time to do this, and just a slight bit of patience, but I think it looks really cool in the end. And this really is kind of an artistic license here. You got to make it however you want it to look. Just kind of be creative, and you can always take off clay and put more clay on, so I wouldn't really fret about it. But this is mine. I really like the way it looks, so this is kind of what I'm going with. So now I'm going to take a piece of clay. It can be pretty thin. Rolled it out, and this will be the backing for my piece. You'll just put it directly on there. And since it is a circle cutter I used, I'm just going to cut out that and then kind of line it up on the back to make sure I cover up all of my clay inside. And then you'll need to cut out that centerpiece. You could leave it in if you wanted to, but it just makes sense to kind of cut it out. And then you can use a tool and kind of scrub or wipe it in the middle to kind of smooth out the rim of it. It's a nice smooth stone you're kind of going for here. And you can always add more clay into the center if you're not completely covering up all of the undercolor. So I have a little bit of spots in here that isn't completely being covered. So I'm just taking some of that clay and putting an itty bitty little piece on there. And you'll see that the circle in the middle is not as large as it was before. So that's what I was talking about earlier. You want to make sure that your hole is big enough to accommodate. Just make sure everything is smooth on the back, and then you can kind of take any excess and push it over onto the side. And if you don't have enough clay and it's not pushing around, just take an itty bitty piece of your rolled out clay and fill in those spots and smooth it out. You'll want to put that on a piece of paper. You don't want it shiny on the back. And you'll put that in the oven and bake it. And this is my piece. I did fill in all of the colored clay with just a little bit of resin. And I left all of the stone its natural flat consistency and color and texture. I hope that you enjoyed this video and the previous two videos, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!